Hi, Rick. Hello, everybody. We're here at the cafeteria at Hawks Rise Elementary School, the birthplace of Canopy Roads. Let's go inside and take a look. Well, it doesn't look like it did on that first Sunday, September the 8th of 1996. Didn't have the cafeteria tables down. We had chairs out. And we had the cafeteria tables folded up and along the edges of the cafeteria kind of framing out our worship center. We didn't need this big old cafeteria for our first service. Man, did we have humble beginnings. That first day we had 53 people here and 8 of them were guests. We had 2 preschoolers, 8 children, and our whole youth group of 3. That included the 2 Wade boys and Allison. That day we came in and we started setting up, and we wanted to practice a week or 2 before we opened it up to the public, so this was our first practice Sunday. And we didn't do any Bible study, we did just worship. We came in and set up, and back in the back here, we had our massive soundboard. It was a 16-channel Mackie. We had no idea why we'd gotten such a big soundboard because we knew we'd never need all those inputs. We only needed 6. We had a keyboard. Actually, it was a digital piano. It wasn't even a keyboard. We had 4 vocalists, and then I had a wireless mic, and that was the extent of our sound system. But we came in and set up and got it all ready to go and had our first worship service. You know, and from the start, Canopy Roads was a church that was a little different from the other kind of churches that I've been a part of. It was a church that was focused on reaching people who didn't go to church, people who were far from God. We call them unchurched people or seekers. You know, we didn't want to just grow at the expense of other churches. We wanted to reach people who are not already going to church. So we did some things differently, very differently. Not the least of which was meeting in the school cafeteria. But during those early days, we learned some important lessons about how to reach people who didn't go to church. We understood that after doing this for a while, of course we didn't know what we were doing to start off with, but we came to understand that there were some things that you had to do a little differently in order to reach people who were not accustomed to going to church. And one of the things had to do with our visiting people who came. We wanted to be a friendly church, and we wanted to make sure that the guests felt welcome. So every time someone would visit, we would go and give them a hospitality gift right after their visit. We'd go Sunday afternoon after they'd been in church that morning. And we'd show up at their door and give them some home-baked cookies or some sort of bread that we'd baked and a little brochure about the church. And we wanted them to feel welcome and feel like this was a place that really cared about them. And we thought that was really cool. But after we'd done that for a while, we discovered that the church people, the Christians, thought that was awesome. Here are these folks from Canopy Roads just hours after we visited the church. But then we found that the seekers didn't come back. And we began to ask questions, and we discovered that what was going through the mind of the seekers and the unchurched people was, oh no, now they know where we live. So what we were doing to try to reach lost people was actually making us unfriendly towards lost people. So we changed that. In fact, the crowning visit that made us change that was one afternoon, I got a call. This was middle of the afternoon on Sunday from one of our teams that had been out visiting. This was during the summer months, and it was hot that day, and they came back and called me and said, we had kind of an awkward visit today. I said, well, tell me about it. Well, we went to this house where these folks had come and knocked on the door. There's nobody there, but we could hear them in the backyard. So we walked around back, and the lady was there, and she was in her bikini working in the garden. And we said, hello, we're so-and-so from Canopy Roads Church. And when she saw that we were from the church, she was horrified. So she was totally embarrassed, and they never came back. So we began to think, well, maybe we need to change this idea of visiting everybody as soon as they come to church. Well, so we changed that, and we decided that, you know, maybe seekers need to do things a little differently. We need to take it a little slower with that. And then we discovered the power of community, something that we have made a trademark of Canopy Roads ever since. While we're in the cafeteria, back here in the back, after the service every time, we would come back and we would have coffee and cookies and donuts and other kind of snacks. And we discovered that the food factor made our church feel even more friendly. You know, we had the reputation of being a friendly church anyway, and we thought it was just because we're just charismatic individuals and people just love to hang out with us. But what we discovered was there was a food factor. What was making our community so compelling was that right after the service, people could just hang out and drink coffee in a casual, relaxed atmosphere. They could eat brownies or nut bread or whatever we'd brought that morning and just have a natural conversation. And that is exactly what unchurched people were looking for. They were looking for a church experience that was not churchy. They were looking for a church experience that was relevant and relational and connected with them. So when we had that kind of experience, it was contagious for them. And they started coming back, and we understood that, wow, this is a powerful idea. So we had a lot of learnings that we had during those early years, and we began to grow. And, it was 9 months before we had video in here. If you can imagine Canopy Roads without video, we had 9 months before we even had a video projector. And then there were 17 months before we had a band. I know you can't imagine us without drums and a bass guitar and a keyboardist and electric guitar and acoustic guitar, but we didn't have that when we first got started. We were here in just a big old cafeteria. We had some great singers and a keyboard, but we didn't have a band. So we knew those are things that we need to help make our church relevant and something that connects with unchurched people. So over the next 6 years, God began to grow our church. And we reached a lot of people that weren't going to church. And then God began to grow us in a way that we began getting excited about buying property and building a building. And then in December of 2002, we moved into our first facility, the facility that you're sitting in now. It's been an incredible ride. And that kind of wraps us up here at Hawks Rise. So, Rick, we're going to go back to you there in the home church.